Hi there everyone, I'm recently back from the awarding of the 2024 Nobel Prizes in Stockholm, Sweden. If you don't believe me, well, can you spot me in this picture? That's me up there at a very high altitude. And here's the banquet they held afterwards. You'd be doing even better to spot me here. There you go. Now I wanted to share with all of you what it was like to attend the Nobel Prize. Unfortunately, I wasn't allowed to take photos or make video. But what I have done is a really long sort of discussion interview with my friend Tim on a podcast we do together called The Unmade Podcast. I'm going to play that now, but at the same time, what I can show you is lots of great photos and video from the Nobel Prize people themselves. They were allowed to take photos and make videos. So while you listen to what it's like behind the scenes at the Nobel Prize, there'll be lots of pictures and video for you to look at. Let's get straight into it.
So, man, I saw you sent me a photo, and I think you also put it on social media of you in a tuxedo. Very impressive, looking very sophisticated.
White tie and tails, no less.
Wow.
Not just a tux.
And the photo was taken just as you happened to be walking past a building that happened to be hosting the Nobel Prize ceremony and dinner. What a coincidence. Where did you go for dinner that night? No, I'm kidding. So you've obviously gone to this. Now, is this the awarding of the Nobel Prizes, or is this like a dinner as well, though? Yeah.
I went to the Nobel Prize ceremony and the banquet that comes afterwards.
Wow.
I think this is like the Oscars of science. This is like going to the Oscars.
Now, there are different Nobel Prizes, aren't there? Like there's the the Peace Prize. Was that given out there, or is this only the sciencey stuff?
So the one I went to was all of the Nobel Prizes except the Peace Prize, because the Nobel Peace Prize is actually done in Oslo, and it's decided by a different organisation. It's kind of cleaved off from the other prizes.
Right.
So the only prize I didn't see awarded was the Peace Prize. So the ones that were being presented to what I went to were chemistry, physics, literature, physiology and medicine, and economics.
Not PE.
Not PE, not business maths.
Business maths, drama, everything I did, it's never recognised. It's only your subjects.
No, none of those ones. I'm not making a video or anything about it for reasons I'm about to explain.
Right.
So I thought I would take the opportunity to talk a bit about the experience and my observations and what I saw and what I thought about it here on the Unmade Podcast, if you don't mind.
Yeah. No, I really want to hear about this, but just to remind me and for some people, so who was Nobel? Why are these given? They're
okay.
Yeah,
that's a good story actually. So Alfred Nobel was like an inventor and a businessman from Sweden,
right?
And his most famous invention was dynamite. So something that happened was there was an incorrect report that he had died, and he saw some media reporting about his death, and I think it was something along the lines of like, the merchant of death has died. The man who's responsible for all these deaths is now dead himself.
Right.
And when Nobel saw this, he thought, oh my goodness, like he realized that was going to be his legacy. He was going to be remembered as quite a negative person in history.
Yep.
And he was like, I can't have that. So he wrote a will up and bequeathed his fortune to create these prizes in his memory. So the Nobel Prizes are created in the memory of Alfred Nobel. And he asked the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences to decide the prizes each year. So that's what they do. So that's where the Nobel Prizes came from. And they've become like the kind of the most famous prizes, haven't they, in these fields. There are now prizes worth more money and things like that. You get it's about $1 million or something for winning a Nobel Prize, although it's often split between you and your fellow winners.
Right.
But then there are various rules to do with the Nobel Prize. They've become quite antiquated rules now. A lot of people question them.
What do you mean? What sort of rules? Like you can only win it if you're a man and you're tall and.
Well, for example, one rule that's probably an okay rule is you can't award it to someone who's dead. So if you do something great and you die, you won't be a Nobel Prize winner. You have to be alive.
Okay, so they're not awarded posthumously. Yep.
They are not. Also, the most that a single prize can go to is 3 people. And a lot of science these days is done by lots and lots of people.
Yeah.
But the prize has to go to, at the most, 3 people, be divided between them. So that's becoming a difficult thing as well. When you get something like the Large Hadron Collider and the thousands of people have worked on these projects, who do you give the physics prize to?
Oh, well, I don't reckon there's been a scientific paper published in a journal ever that had less than 3 authors in the last 20 years. So, like, how are they going to avoid, let alone something that's been genuinely, innovative enough to win the Nobel Prize. So,
not only do I agree with you, I'm impressed by your knowledge of scientific journals.
Well, if it's like any other academic journals, you know what I mean? But particularly the STEM subjects are notorious for having, 25 people, whoever turned on the Bunsen burner got their name in the journal as well.
So last year, actually, I got invited to go to the Nobel Prize by the committee, the Nobel Committee in Chemistry, the committee that decides who wins the chemistry prize. Because for many, many years now, I've made YouTube videos about the Nobel Prize winners in both chemistry on my Periodic Videos YouTube channel and in physics on my 60 Symbols channel. When they announced the prize, we've always really quickly as we could, sometimes on the same day, have convened at the University of Nottingham and made videos really quickly explaining what it's all about. And they've become real little events in our calendar on the YouTube channels. And the Nobel Committee has noticed that, has known about them. I even heard a story once that apparently someone on the committee once showed one of my videos to the King of Sweden to help explain what one of the prizes was for. So,
oh, right.
That's something I've heard. I don't know if it's true, but
that is cool. Can I ask at that point, like, is it when you're about to make a video about the winner, is it because you know that there are 3 or 4 people who are nominated, or is it like out of the blue?
Totally out of the blue. It's really, really secretive who wins the Nobel Prize. Even the winners don't know until half an hour before it's announced.
Right.
So it's announced like a few months before the awarding, obviously. So they announce them, I can't remember what month. Is it October or something like that? And then they always have the prize ceremony in December. I think they have it on the anniversary of Nobel's death, from memory.
So there's no losers at this event you're going to. There's no, like, it's an honour just to be nominated. No. You never knew that you were close and in the running. Only the winners are invited.
No, there's no losers in the audience pretending to be happy. So I was invited last year. I couldn't go, so I thought, oh, that's a shame. That's my chance gone. But they invited me again this year, and I could go and wanted to go. There's no real reason for me to be there, but it's something I've always been curious about and wanted to see, and it's a bit of a bit of a perk, isn't it? So I said yes, but I couldn't take photos or make video. That was made very clear. That's like one of the rules, because there's all, it's a big media event. It's televised in Sweden, like it's a big media event, and that. So like it's a really big deal. I'll come to that. So I was kind of like, I've got no real reason to go, but I want to go. So I said yes. I actually had to sign a document that if I was caught filming or taking photos at the event, I would have to pay a huge fine, like 30,000 Swedish kroners. They were pretty serious about making sure I didn't video and film. I'll come to that again in a minute as well. So I signed the form, I agreed to go, and I was all good. But then I realised you had to dress in like tails and white tie, which is like the most formal you can dress. I do own a tux now, like for going to black tie events, but that was no good to me because it hasn't got tails and it's black tie, and this was white tie, and you got to wear these white waistcoats as well. And so I went and hired all that gear, and that cost a fortune. And I left it a bit late, but I managed to just get it in time. It was quite funny actually. The guy who was like fitting me for the suit said, what event is this for? Is this for a wedding? And I said, oh, no, it's actually for an event. I've actually got to take it to Sweden. I'm actually going to the Nobel Prize. And he just looked at me really impressively and said, oh, congratulations. And I had to say, oh, no, I haven't won a Nobel Prize. I'm just going to watch. This became a bit of a theme I found amongst my friends that don't know much about the Nobel Prize. They've seen pictures of me in the tux and wearing this little medal because I'm wearing my Order of Australia. Yeah. And they all think I've won the Nobel Prize, and they're all congratulating me on winning it's kind of like, I haven't won the Nobel Prize. I will never win the Nobel Prize. I was thinking, actually, I think I'm more likely to win an Oscar than a Nobel Prize. Right. And I'm not going to win an Oscar either. So.
And now, this is using my memory, you're too old to win the Fields Medal now, is that right?
Yes, I am. You've got to be under 40 to win the Fields Medal, which is a mathematics prize.
Oh,
yes.
Loser there too.
That one's got by me as well. I'm also too stupid to win a Nobel Prize or a Fields Medal, but that's a whole other issue.
But that's not written down somewhere. The age is, so.
No, that's right. So I got my suit and went over to Sweden, Stockholm, capital of Sweden. I took Kylie and Edward, my wife and son, came along for a holiday as well. We thought we'd make a little few-day holiday of it. We're staying like in an Airbnb. And then the moment arrived, like it was time. When you're in Stockholm, by the way, in Nobel Prize week, it's like a really big deal. Like there's like a Nobel light show. There's light shows everywhere, and Nobel Prize stuff's projected onto buildings, and
it is a bit like award season in Hollywood. Then everyone's talking about the Oscars.
Yeah. And the city gets really into it. Like we'd be in like a taxi, and you'd hear like a popular radio show. It was in Swedish, so I couldn't tell exactly what they were saying, but they were clearly talking about the Nobel Prize, and you heard them talking about DNA and micro DNA and who's won the prizes, and so it's a big like the city gets really into it. Like they're really proud of it, I think. So it becomes the city's really taken over by the prize for this week of the ceremony. So then I had to put on my outfit, which was like really difficult. Like, because it doesn't have buttons. Like, it has these little studs you use instead of buttons to put through the buttonholes, and I couldn't get the sleeves to work, and I found it really difficult to put on my outfit.
Goodness knows how James Bond slips in and out of it, so easily.
No, yeah, I don't know what's going on there. But then just about an hour before I was going to go, my wife got really sick and started like really sick and started throwing up. She wasn't coming. I only had one invite, but she was obviously staying home with our boy, and I'm like, I can't leave you home if you're sick looking after him. I'll have to not go. Like, I can't go. This is like terrible, but that's the way things go. But she was like insistent that I go. She was like, she took a bullet for the team. She's like, no, you've got to go. That's why we're here, and it's your one opportunity. And so shout out to her for soldiering on at home while I went off and gallivanted like James Bond, a science James Bond.
She should win the Nobel Prize for parenting, man.
Yes.
For wifing, actually.
She should. So I went along to the ceremony where they like give out the medals is held at the concert hall, the Stockholm Concert Hall.
Oh, right. Okay. Yep. That's the building I saw in the photo. That looked very nice, yes.
Yes, that's the one I'm standing outside in the photo, and I'll include that in the notes. And you go through there's like a big queue of people all dressed up, and you go through like security, like to check you are who you are and ID and all that, and they check people's bags to make sure they're not doing anything dodgy. There were all these young people. I saw these young women, like quite young, but in like gowns, like in impressive gowns, all dressed up. But they were all wearing like sailor hats, and it reminded me of like a hen party or a stag do. You know how sometimes when a big group of girls do a hen party, they all wear sailor hats,
and they all get into the same costume, and
yeah. And I go, why are all these young people wearing sailor hats? Are they not taking this seriously? Is this some kind of joke to them or something? Like, what's going on? So eventually I asked one of the people, there were also men wearing them, and I said, why are you all wearing these sailor hats? And it turns out they were all university students, and the Nobel Prize people invite a bunch of university students to attend every year as like a bonus or a little perk, or to expose young people to science. They have like a lottery across all the Swedish universities to win a chance to go to the Nobel Prize. And when you're a university student in Sweden, apparently these hats are kind of like the traditional hats of university students, like mortarboards or like traditional gowns or something. This is like their thing, these funny looking hats. So you wear them to like represent your university and represent that you're a university student. So there was this smattering of people in the audience wearing these funny sailor hats, but apparently that's a thing in Sweden. So
right, okay.
The other thing I learnt was I just went in my suit. But Sweden is obviously a cold place, especially in December. And I didn't wear a coat because I thought I wouldn't be outside much. And that was all right. I got away with it. But most Swedish people did wear coats. And one thing that really impressed me when you got in the hall was the scale of the coat check operation. Because you've got like 1,000 people. I don't know how many people were there. Probably more than 1,000. All of them with huge coats. All of them needing to check their coats. And the coat check operation at the Nobel Prize, and presumably at all these things in Sweden, was epic. It was massive. There were multiple places to do it, huge cavernous areas where they were putting all the coats.
It's more like a coat valet, really. It's like here is my coat and the keys to my coat, and we'll bring it around later on, sir, when you come to leave.
It was a huge operation before and after the ceremonies, like people checking in and checking out their coats. It's a big thing, which I never really thought about in such a cold country. But
everyone in Sweden should just simply have the same coat. And then you just sort of leave with a coat. You know what I mean? Like, well, here's yours, sir.
Yeah. Like 10-pin bowling shoes.
That's
What's
right.
Your size?
That's right.
I'll take what you give me.
Just take size 4. Oh, here they are. There, off you go.
All right. They should do that. That's a good idea. Anyway, there was a little bit of mingling first in a big, like, you know, it was like going to a theatre show. There was a bit of mingling, and you could buy champagne and stuff beforehand. Everyone's dressed to the nines, of course. And then we filed off and went into the concert hall for the ceremony itself, the awarding of the prizes. I would say I had a seat and location befitting my standing.
You were with the coats, were you, man?
With the coats. I actually was really happy with my seat. It was funny. I was up high on a balcony. I was right up against the ledge, though, so I was as close as you could get to the edge of the balcony, but I was like right around to the side and almost sort of behind the stage, like I was kind of partway level with the stage. But it meant that I was really close to the action, but I had kind of a side-on, almost behind view of it.
Let me refer to your seat as being what I picture as the Abraham Lincoln seat the night he was shot. Is it sort of like that?
Yes, you could have jumped down onto the stage and hurt yourself like John Wilkes Booth. Yeah, it was Abraham Lincoln-esque. I'll take that. Yeah. So, and like I was right near the band, because the band was behind the stage, but also up high. They were up on a balcony, so I was kind of almost at the level of the band, and there was like a proper orchestra and opera singer and all this sort of stuff. There was lots of pomp and ceremony.
Who was the band? Was it ABBA or Ace of Base? Which Swedish band did they play?
Roxette.
Roxette, awesome.
I would have been up for Roxette. I know the lady died from Roxette, but I was actually just listening to a bit of Roxette a couple of days ago because I was in the mood.
You know, Roxette, they're touring Australia next year. He's got another singer.
Oh.
Someone new.
Yeah.
So Per Gessel, the guitarist singer guy, with the dyed black hair, he's found another singer and they're going out again. There you go.
Okay. Oh, I'd be well up for that. I love a bit of Roxette. I did get a Swedish pop star. That comes later. But anyway, this was like an orchestra and an opera singer. And then like the King of Sweden comes out because he's the one who hands over the prizes. And he was over my side of the stage, so I was basically looking at the back of the King of Sweden's head the whole time.
Was there an announcer who said, "And now welcome your host, the King of Sweden," and then everyone applauses?
There was a big like drum roll and music, and I was sitting right near the drummer, and it absolutely scared the bejesus out of me when the drum roll started for the King of Sweden. And then Yul stood up and comes out. There's all, anthems and bits of opera singing in between bits as fillers. And then for each of the prizes, there would be a short speech by like an expert or someone from the Swedish Academy would do like a talk about why they had won the prize.
Right.
And those talks were pretty good. They were mercifully short.
Right.
They were a good length. They've learnt not to bore people. The whole ceremony only lasted an hour.
Oh, right.
And they got through 5 Nobel Prizes, and most of those prizes had been won by multiple people.
MicroRNAs are conductors with a special ability. Instead of passionately making gestures to either amplify or dampen music intensity, microRNAs tell musicians only when to quiet down.
And the people just get their medal and a certificate and do a little bow. They don't talk at all, the winners.
Oh.
They just get their medal and sit back down.
Is there a photographer up the front who sort of, they stand there posing it and the guy runs up like at a graduation
ceremony? Well, there are photographers and it's all and film crews, and it was well done. It was really, it was posh and it looked befitting of a big deal. It looked like a big deal. I would say it was a bit boring. Mm-hmm. It did remind me of being a little bit like at a A church service. Sorry, I get really bored in church services. It reminded me of that level of boredom and about that length, like about an hour of talking and music that you kind of are trying to engage with, but your mind's wandering a bit.
And now here's the King of Kings. It's like, wow.
Everybody stand for Jesus. But it was like that too. There was There was lots of standing up and sitting down because you stood up each time someone got their prize, and
it's like a standing ovation.
Every time
it's like
yeah, and when the king stands up, you stand up.
So is it really just like a school thing where it's like, all right, now we move on to maths, and here's so and so to explain what maths is, and
it was like a school awards night, but more expensive looking. And everyone was more dressed up. But I said I wasn't allowed to use my phone, and I was dying to use it, but I wasn't allowed to, so I didn't.
You signed something saying you wouldn't. And
no, that's right, so I didn't. So I don't have to pay that fine.
Right.
But loads of people were, and I was like, well, they're all doing it. Oh. Not as much as you would expect. Not as much as, like... you would expect phones to be out at a posh event like that. So obviously the memo had gone out not to use it. But people were using that and filming little bits that were relevant to them. A South Korean woman won the Literature Prize.
Oh, yes, I saw that on the news. Yeah.
Yeah, there were a few Korean journalists around me, and they got their camera out when she got her prize and stuff like that. So the rules were being flouted, but not by me. I was basically just so paranoid about that fine. I was convinced they had like spy cameras on me or something, or someone was with like binoculars over the other side waiting for Brady Haran to get his phone out so they could get their 30K.
But you think if your son, like, or grandsons won, the Nobel Prize for maths, and I'm in row 4, I'm going to pull my phone out and take like a photo. Like, I don't care how much it's going to cost, Yeah. So,
professional photos are taken that I'm sure you will get access to. So, like, I don't think you should worry you're going to miss out on a picture of your son getting his Nobel Prize. But yeah, you'd think you'd do it anyway.
Now, please step forward and accept the prize from His Majesty the King.
So anyway, there we go. The prizes were given. Everyone had to stand up again for the King and the national anthem, and everyone filing off the stage.
You've flown to Sweden, hired a tux with tails, gone along to the ceremony that only goes for 1 hour, has royalty, and has people winning the Nobel Prize, 5 of them, and you've gotten bored. I think that says something about you, man.
Well, anyway, it's kind of, Anyway, it is what it is. And I was very honoured to be there. And it was really interesting. But there was one guy, the first guy that got the physics prize, he was like quite an older guy and quite physically impaired. Like, he had a stick and he couldn't walk very easily. Mm-hmm. And like when he sort of hobbled up and got his prize, he was so happy. He was so proud. And the smile on his face, and he stood there and he bowed a few times to the audience and bowed to the king and bowed to everyone. And you could tell he was just soaking it up.
Yeah,
and like he was so happy that he'd been recognised for this work he'd probably done years and years ago. That was quite special, and you felt like the prize felt special to them. Then when everyone else got theirs, they were like, scientists who had probably been decorated many times and won many awards. And granted, this was the biggest award they were ever going to get. So they were obviously pretty happy and pretty proud. But they were just normal, they just got up there, shook the hand, did a bow and sat down. And it was just like, there's another award for me and this is a nice night. But this first guy that won it, you could tell it was this like crowning achievement. And this was his moment. That was definitely the moment.
Maybe he hadn't been told until that moment. Like, everyone else would have jumped around the lounge room, 5 months beforehand when their name was read out. But by the time they've got there and then they're in front of people, they're being a bit more dignified. But maybe this guy, his colleagues and friends had kept it from him, going, oh, we've been invited along, like Brady Haran, to just go and watch it. And then his name's read out. It's like a massive practical joke, but an amazing gift.
Just to be clear, all the people that are winning Nobel Prizes are sitting up on the stage on seats ready to get their prizes. So they very much know who they are.
He may have thought, oh, we've got really good seats. Yeah.
The other cool thing was, though, because he couldn't walk very easily, they were all there in their like white tails and tuxes and everything, and all wearing like black shoes like you do when you wear a tux. But he couldn't wear those shoes obviously because it affected his walking, and he was wearing like New Balance trainers. Legend. So he was up there in like full like white tie outfit, but with New Balance trainers. It was cool. It was really noticeable.
That's really great. Yeah. Maybe his friends told him that they'd bought the VIP package. Like, you know, when you go see Metallica, you can like pay like a ridiculous amount and you meet the band beforehand and get a special seat and have
photo
a beer
with the king.
Right down they're like, okay, so we've bought the VIP package. You get to put your coat in over here early. You get in there. We've got a seat on the stage, and you get a Nobel Prize for it. It's like, nice. It's like, take home. Really? Oh, wow. Yeah. And you can wear your sneakers. That sounds like a pretty good night out for him.
So anyway, the king leaves. Everyone gets up and shakes everyone's hand. There's a big handshaking fest on the stage.
Right.
And we can leave. But then it's off to like I think it's the city hall or the town hall where the Nobel Prize banquet is being held. So we all like leave the venue, and you get in like these chartered buses, these coaches, so you sort of still stay inside the security cordon a bit.
Oh, right.
And I think they'd closed some roads and stuff. And
so what time was the ceremony then? It was quite early. Was it like 5 o'clock or something?
Yeah. I can't remember what time. It was like 4 o'clock or something.
Oh, okay.
And then we get in these buses, and that felt kind of weird because you're all really dressed up. And you get like you're being crammed into all these buses, a bit like when you're getting bussed around an airport, like out to your plane, like, you know, because a lot of people are standing up and you're all crowded in these buses. So it felt like you were being bussed to a plane at an airport, except you're all like really, really dressed up. We go across town to the city hall. It was only 15 minutes or something like that. You get out. You do security again. There were protesters at this venue, but we were kind of brought in the back, so we didn't really get very exposed to all the protesters. I think that I don't know what they were protesting, but it's a big, huge event, so it's a chance to protest, so I'm sure they were protesting something.
They weren't protesting that you were there or that this guy had worn sneakers or...
What's that guy got an invite for?
So who did you sit next to on the bus? That's always a good question.
I stood on the bus. I stood up on the bus.
Right. Nice.
Yeah. So I was quite uncomfortable actually. Got to the city hall. You go in again. Security again. You go in again. There are like lots more TV cameras and lights here, filming people walking in because obviously there are probably some famous Swedish people there, and it's a big glamorous event and lots of royalty there and stuff. So I managed to walk in without being filmed or stopped, as far as I could tell. Right. I obviously didn't know who I was. You know.
There wasn't like a red carpet moment where someone said, you know, are you excited to have been here? And, you know.
No.
What are you wearing?
Tell us about... Yeah, here you go. Tell us what's going to be in the next Unmade podcast. Who did your nose hair? So then there was another massive coat check operation. Now, one thing about the dress code at this event was you're supposed to wear any honours you've won. Like, that's part of a dress code. It's, you know, white tie and honours. And of course I have my Order of the Medal of Australia, which I've never taken out of the box before. Never had any reason to do anything with it. It just sits in a box in a drawer in my office. And I was like, oh, well, I'm not going to miss my one chance to wear it. So I was wearing my little gold medallion on my lapel.
Yep.
Which is one of the reasons lots of people on Facebook and my friends all think I won the Nobel Prize, because I see this picture of me standing outside the Nobel Prize venue with this little gold medal, and they think that must be a Nobel Prize. So, but anyway, so I did feel a bit of a poser wearing it. But so many people were wearing honours at this event that you kind of blended in. It was all right. But I also found it quite useful because I'm not very good at small talk and mingling, but it does become like a talking point. So I was standing next to this guy, and he had a bunch of medals on his suit, but he was looking at mine, and he didn't recognise it, and he came up to me and said, "What's that? What's that one for?" And I explained what it was, and then I asked about his, and he explained what his were, and then I said to him, I asked what his job was, and it turns out he was an MP in the Swedish Parliament.
Oh, right.
And so before the banquet, we had a really nice conversation. It was really fun to talk to someone who's obviously a big deal in Sweden. And he said, I've got to be careful of this and this because, you know, following the protocol, because someone will take a picture of me or something like that. So it was a big deal. But I obviously know nothing about Swedish politics. It's really funny to talk to someone who's obviously really important in the country. And I was saying to him, so are you in government or opposition? And like, you know.
Oh, yeah, right. You didn't know the basics even, yeah.
Asking all these really naive questions. He was really great in answering them. He probably quite enjoyed my naivety.
The only thing I know about Scandinavian politics is Borgen, but that's like Denmark.
Denmark. Oh yeah, I know my Borgen. I could have talked to him about like murders and how murders are investigated in Sweden, but yeah.
Indeed, that's right. Yes, on the bridge.
So anyway, eventually we got we got released into this massive. I guess it's a room. It felt more like a basketball stadium. It was so big, this huge room, but very grand and beautiful, where the banquet was being held. Loads and loads of tables. Big, massive, long table through the middle,
right? Yeah.
Where the king and all the VIPs were going to sit, and that was huge. And then all these other tables going off at perpendicular to it, like wings, like loads and loads of tables. One of the things I was worried about at this event was I was going to feel massive imposter syndrome. I was worried I was going to be sitting at a table with friends or family of the winners or fellow researchers, part of the research team, because obviously these people get to bring some of their researchers, and they would say to me, who are you, and why are you here? And I'd explain my tenuous reason for being there. And they would all look at me angrily because they would think of, Jimmy, the lab technician back in America who didn't get to come to the event but had done all this work.
Oh, right.
So I thought,
okay,
I was worried I was going to feel like I shouldn't be there and I was taking the seat of someone who should be there.
And no one goes to one of these events thinking, oh, geez, I hope I get sat next to a podcaster. Like it's...
Yeah, exactly. It turns out I needn't have worried about that because where I was sat, granted I was probably sat at a certain area of a certain table that was not the glamour area. I wasn't next to the king. But I found there were lots and lots of people there who were husbands or wives or sons or daughters or friends of people who were a member of the Swedish Academy who were getting to bring their husband this time, and they were normally sitting over at some posh table, but I was sitting over with the wives and husbands, and I felt like I was sitting with lots of people whose reason for being there was at a similar level to my own.
Right,
so I didn't end up feeling that. I think I was sat next to some husbands and wives, friends, daughter of the architect that designed this building for the Nobel thing and that. So I felt, but I was sat with really interesting people, still interesting scientists, had some really great conversations, made some nice contacts. There was lots of kind of toasts and things at the banquet and food, nice food.
Hans Majestät Konungen, His Majesty the King.
I would like you all to join me in a toast to honor the great donor Alfred Nobel.
There was like entertainment. There was like there was this 3 or 4 part sort of interpretive dance music show that was done in segments between all the courses. That was not my cup of tea, you know me. I'm not too into my arts and stuff, so it's not something I was too into. And I thought, to quote the castle, I thought they had their hand on it a bit, but they were short. Again, these people have learnt not to.
So you didn't get bored, thankfully.
No, I didn't get bored. And there was some performer called Lale, who I was told is a big star singer in Sweden.
If they call it good, then maybe I'm bad.
And she was singing a few songs, including some newly composed music. So apparently that was a big deal when she was singing. She was a good singer. She could hold a tune.
Right.
Don't ask me what the show was about.
Hello to Lale if you're listening.
Yeah. The banquet lasted 4 hours, and I thought, oh gosh. But when I was talking to the MP beforehand, he told me, make sure you go to the toilet because you're not allowed to stand up. Because you're not allowed to stand up in a room when the king is sitting and the king's in the room. And I didn't need to go to the toilet, but I knew I'd need to later. So I thought, this is going to be a problem.
Gosh.
Turns out people were getting up and going to the toilet, I think. I didn't need to go in the end anyway, so...
Gosh. What if the king needs to go to the toilet? Then everyone goes. Massive rush.
That's what I said.
Toilet.
I said, doesn't the king need to get up and go to the toilet? And he said, I don't think so. He's pretty experienced at these things. He's got a royal bladder.
Right. He goes beforehand.
Yeah.
And yeah. That'd be funny if no one's able to go until he goes, but then he stands up to go, and then everyone rushes. So it turns out there's a massive fight for the line. The king ends up halfway through. It's like you stood up. You stood up.
The thing was, everyone at this centre table, this really long table down the middle, they came in last after we were all seated and had been waiting around for 20 minutes. And they left before we could leave. But this hall was massive, right? And it had this huge balcony and staircase that was the length of the hall. And when they said, everyone stand up, here comes the king and the VIPs, we all stood up. And the king walked along this huge balcony that was the length of the hall, and then it wrapped around and turned around the other wall of the hall, and then came down this huge staircase, and then had to walk the length of this huge table again, and they all took their seats. And most of them were old and slow. And I reckon we must have been standing for 15 minutes waiting for them to come in and sit down.
Gosh.
It was
I would have had to go to the toilet at the end of that, let alone the whole banquet.
There was a lot of standing. Anyway, we had our meals. We got entertained. They gave us booze. Then for the first time, there are speeches by the winners. But only one winner from each category makes a speech. And some of these categories had 3 winners, so they obviously picked which one was going to make the speech. And the speeches are supposed to be... I had read the speeches are supposed to be short, which they were. Excellent. And they were supposed to be like... I had read they were supposed to be light-hearted. Some of them were not light-hearted. The first one, the guy that won for physics, got up and did this real doom speech about how... Because his prize was partly for artificial intelligence. He gave a real doom speech about AI and how AI could destroy the world. And the person who won the economics prize also did a real doom speech about the fate of the world. So and they were the first and last speeches. So it started and ended with some real downer speeches. But they were short and they were good speeches.
These are people who are being awarded for their breakthrough, and they're saying, "But you just be warned, my breakthrough will facilitate the end of the world." Thank you very much. Good night.
Kind of. It was kind of like, I mean, these aren't people that invented artificial intelligence. They just used it for good. But they were saying, this stuff that I used to get the prize is going to be used for some pretty bad stuff. But anyway, the speeches were done. The entertainment was done.
Right.
All was done. I'd probably had my fill by then. There was like a big dance afterwards in another room in the building. I had to get home, didn't I? Like I had a wife and child at home. My wife was feeling better by this point, by the way, just so you know. I had been in touch the whole time to make sure everything was okay on the home front. I had to sneakily get my phone out under the table to check in at home so I didn't get fined.
Oh, right, okay, yes. So that was a legitimate purpose.
They did make a big deal about not using your phones at the banquet, that you were like warned multiple times that they didn't want you to do that. So
unless the king uses his first. So if he's like checking Facebook,
then everyone gets their phones out.
Yes.
Yeah. That was it. Then I left. There are also apparently lots of after parties. A few people I spoke to had tickets to like the cool after parties that all the students go to and the winners, and it's all really cool. But I hadn't gotten a ticket to one of those anyway. I didn't know anyone cool enough, so I could have gone to the dance, but I didn't have a ticket for any of the cool after parties, and I hadn't made a connection to get me one. So I went home. I couldn't wait to get out of that suit. I can't tell you how much I hate wearing stuff like that. Got home, ripped off my suit, got into bed, went to sleep. Nobel Prize done.
Done and dusted. Nice.
Done.
That's a fascinating evening. You did get bored, and but you managed to. You've sort of talked about it like it's an endurance event, like it was fascinating, but a bit of an endurance evening.
Yeah.
So
I enjoyed the banquet because the people sitting around me were quite interesting. I got quite lucky. I had a playwright next to me, a chemist who does entertaining videos about chemistry, so we had a lot to bond over. A radio journalist opposite me from Swedish radio, and another scientist. So I had a good bunch of people around me. I had run out of small talk ability, though.
You didn't meet any of the winners?
No, you don't really I didn't get near them. I had met one of them a couple of weeks before. I'd been at a separate event at the Royal Society, and one of the winners happened to be there. So I had met him before, and I said to him, "Oh, I'm coming to your ceremony," and we'd spoken a bit about it. So I have met one of the winners, but I didn't at the event because you couldn't stand up, so you couldn't go up to their table and talk to them. So I don't know how I could have. I don't know whether they went to the dance afterwards, but... And
they each win about $1 million, but that wasn't given like with a big novelty check on the night or anything like that.
There was no big novelty check. You split the money too, so if you win it 3 ways, you split it how the committee sees fit.
I once had a Nobel Prize winner email me. Have you ever had an email from a Nobel Prize winner?
Will it hurt your feelings if I say yes?
Say no so that my story sounds cooler.
No. Tell me about it.
Well,
What was that like? Who was it? What was it for?
it was J.M. Coetzee, a novelist, who won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2003.
Yeah.
He's South African, but he now lives in Adelaide. And about 20 years ago or 15 years ago, I had a book club, and we were reading through all the winners of the Booker Prize, of which he won the Booker. And so we actually I thought, as one of those random nights where I thought, I'm just going to email him and ask him if he wants to come along to our book club one night and have a beer and a burger and chat about his books, which I'm sure he wasn't even going to reply, but I sent it off to his publisher anyway, and offering to pay for the burger and the beer, and naming the pub in North Adelaide. And lo and behold, I got an email reply, a very polite one saying, thank you so much for your invitation, your kind invitation, and I will have to decline because I don't speak publicly about my books anymore. But
Yep.
Thank you again, and have a lovely evening and all the rest of it.
You should have said you don't have to talk about the book. Just come and have a burger.
It's like just push him. Nah, can't.
How about I buy you 2 burgers?
2 burgers, come on. It'll be great. Just nag him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel a little bit like Adrian Mole, where he just brags about the amount of rejection letters you get. But I've had a rejection email from a Nobel Prize winner. I feel pretty proud of that. Yes.
Nice. Very nice.
He did start with Dear Tim, so clearly we're on a first name basis now.
You've had a Nobel Prize in Literature writer write something just for you.
And he won for his body of work, so surely my email is incorporated in his Nobel Prize winning. In one sense,
yes.
I've contributed to his Nobel Prize winning literature. When I say we're on a first name basis, of course, I refer to him as J.M. Coetzee. I don't actually know what his first name is. I literally don't know what it is. I think I wrote Dear Mr. Coetzee.
Thank you for sitting through my Nobel Prize recollections. I feel like I've gotten it off my chest.
Well, that's good. And it only took the same length as the ceremony.
It probably took longer. I've got the same problem as before, though, because I'm thinking, I can send the podcast to the Nobel Prize people and show them that, some kind of work came from them letting me come. But we've got that nose hair issue again.
Yes, indeed.
They're going to say, let's listen to what this guy did after he came and visited our prestigious event with the king. And they're going to have somebody.
That's good.
Dear me.
That's right.
So I can't send it to them now.
No.
I'll have to clip it up.
And if there's enough time, I'm going to get to my idea as well, which is not going to bathe you in more prestigious glory, that's for sure. This is not a put your tux on kind of idea.
All right, then, quickly, podcast ideas. Here's my podcast idea, 30 seconds. Wouldn't it be a good podcast to go through every Nobel Prize that's ever been won and talk about it from the start? Each category, each winner, what it was for, any interesting stories about the people. This is a podcast the Nobel Prize people should probably make. They probably have. Easy idea. There you go. I've suggested an idea. Job done.
I think it's a pretty good idea, except that I feel like the people's interest would be attached to a particular genre, not to the prize as a whole. So I very happily listen to all the literature people, but I'm not at all interested in the others. Unless you can make it interesting for me. Like, hey, this is a great way to learn.
I could do that.
I'm sure you could.
Make them interesting.
I'm not sure they could, though. But I know you
well,
could.
Who knows? So, for example, Albert Einstein won the Nobel Prize in physics, of course, and everyone thinks he won it for, like, relativity, E equals mc squared and all that stuff. But he won it for one of his other pieces of work called the photoelectric effect. Okay,
let me ask you a science question that's related, and maybe related to this. If you ask anyone to name a scientist, they obviously name Albert Einstein.
Yep.
Who's number 2? Who's the second most famous scientist of all time?
That's a really good question. It depends. I would think for, like, people in the street, you might get, like, Stephen Hawking.
Oh yeah,
a second.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think number 2 should be Isaac Newton.
Oh yeah, okay. There's another one I've heard of.
For me,
nice.
for me, number 2 is probably Isaac Newton. But I think lots of people would say, yeah, Stephen Hawking, because he's a bit more zeitgeisty, a bit more distinctive, a bit more recent.
Yeah.
But he's certainly not as he didn't win a Nobel Prize, Stephen Hawking, by the way.
Oh right. Is there not one? Is it because his work is it like astronomy and it's theoretical rather than?
Yeah, I think maybe some of the problem for him is some of the stuff that he has theorized hasn't been proven or shown to definitely be true, which is part of getting a Nobel Prize. For example, Peter Higgs, who theorized the legendary Higgs boson. Long time ago. Then they later built the Large Hadron Collider, and then after the Large Hadron Collider had been operating for quite a while, they discovered the Higgs boson, which confirmed his theory was correct, and he finally got a Nobel Prize shortly before he died. So Stephen Hawking probably has run into that a little bit. Like a lot of the stuff that he's thought about and theorized hasn't been 100% confirmed and proven.
Then, even greater honour, he was immortalised with the Higgs Boson Blues, a song by Nick Cave. What greater honour is that? My goodness me.
Nice. Who would you say the second most famous scientist is? Who would you have named?
Oh, look, now you say Isaac Newton, I go, yeah, I guess that's a historical figure that you can't get past. The only other really famous one, apart from Stephen Hawking, I guess there's Richard Dawkins, but Richard Dawkins feels like a guy who's famous for arguing against, the existence of God more than any actual science. Like, I don't actually know any science that he's
his actual science is not like, absolute bleeding edge Nobel Prize stuff, but he's a good communicator and
like he had that prestigious chair for the popularization of science, which was kind of, I think, paid for by Microsoft. And it's like, yeah, that's an emeritus kind of, prestigious job. It's not like you're beavering away somewhere to improve people's lives. So,
what about the scientist from the Muppets that works with Beaker?
Oh yeah, what's his name? The Swedish. That's so funny. We watched a whole bunch of those on YouTube a few months ago. Such a legend. And he always makes Beaker and taste it or put on, whatever his experiment. And now Beaker will be my subject, and Beaker's eyebrows go up.
Well, thanks for watching and listening. If you'd like to listen to more Unmade podcasts with my friend Tim, unmade.fm, there'll be a link in all the usual places, and I'll also link to a playlist of all the videos I've made about the Nobel Prizes over the years here on Periodic Videos about chemistry and 60 Symbols for Physics. Cheers, everyone.